So now that we saw some cool features we can do, let's enhance our runtime level editor. And to be able to load users to be able to load their own models, their own decorations, which are the stackable objects, and their own world, their own tile textures. Now, what we're basically going to do is, when we click this, the categories right now over here, okay, we're going to be getting our objects with icons and everything else you might want, and I can click and place them like before. And so instead of having now a list with just names, we can actually visualize so your players know what they are actually placing. Decorations will be the stackable objects from now on, okay, and the wall creator of course doesn't need a lot of stuff. We've seen this one. And terrain, we can actually visualize the tiles we are painting. And we can also delete tiles, and if we are on the top floor and we have painted a tile, if we delete, of course we're not deleting the tile, we are changing the material to be AR, so when it loads on a game it will not show. And we can also delete decorations. Yeah, decoration not work right now. Delete. I actually need to place one and then start deleting. Okay, objects, and I guess it's the same with the stackable objects. Yeah. Anyway, okay, simple enough. I think the wall creator is the level editor is much cooler this way, and it's more intuitive, and you can have a lot more stuff. And of course, if I save and load, everything will work just fine, since we are basically loading stuff from, we're basically loading before we start initializing the level and creating the level once again. We're loading our database before all that, so we can do everything we want pretty easy. Now let's see the UI a bit. We had previously, I just had a grid that had all this. Okay, we're going to keep the load save level and the save level dialog and all that. We're going to have to create a new menu, which is going to be called level creator buttons. Okay, and it will have basically the categories. We're also going to have inside the change floor, so this will show even if those are closed. Okay, even if these menus are closed, and if I click once again the objects, it will close once again. Now we're only going to keeping the delete, but even if I place it over here, it's not going to do anything since there's no category open. And I can change my floors. Okay, and over here we have the buttons for delete, and floor buttons, yes, are the same. We have a background for the menu, which is the gray part over here, and of course we have our sub menus. Sub menus will have 10 UI buttons. The sub menu game object here is a grid, and we have 10 of these, and we're only going to keep 10 of them. And if we want to have more than 10 objects, we can click back and next, and it will load the next variable. And if it's lower than 10, okay, so if it can cover all 10 positions, it's going to show as we saw in the runtime, so it's only going to have open 4 objects or 5 objects or how many it can actually load. next and back buttons. Okay, these aren't these are pretty much the same, and the same way we have the sub menus, which is with basically this have a background image, doesn't matter. How they have a script, and inside them the main difference is that these have a raw image, because we are actually taking the pictures on runtime. Okay, or if we have already taken them, we just load them. We need to use a raw image over here, and for that reason we need to keep a separate list for when we are showing the materials, which whenever I say materials I mean the tile, the textures for the tile, because there's no point in taking pictures of a tile, okay, because we can simply take the texture, the base color texture we have, and put that one there. So we will have another grid inside the materials, and instead of having a they have the same, they still have their own image, but anyway, let's just keep them separate. Okay, so we'll use another list, and we're also going to have to our grid inside a button that is the paint all, so we can paint all the layers, all the tiles we have on our current floor. Okay, so basically this is the connection, the UI we're going to use, and we're going to have a few scripts that pass references from here and there. And let me actually go find them. You need to, of course, assign on every object what we're going to write, and these have their own. These buttons over here have their own script, which simply has an enum with basically all the menus we have, or if everything is closed. We will see this in a bit. And we have a script into our background for submenus that basically has the references. So our submenu grid, our materials submenu grid, our index, okay, our material if we are on the material list, and the next and previous button. So let's go directly into the scripts, and we should probably go first and see the changes we did on our database. But let's cover the UI first. So for the UI, I'm going to come over here. We're going to be keeping a few two new scripts we're going to write: menu handler and submenu references. Submenu references is what I said, has a submenu grid. Okay, it separates basically the stuff for the submenus. We have a list for the icons list and the material icon list. Another reason why we want to keep the materials separate from the UI is because the materials have a different, when you click on them, they basically have a different behavior. So we need a different list. Material UI icon, for instance, we only need to know the material ID, the raw image, so that we can pass it, and then if we are passing the ID, we're going to call pass material to paint to the level creator. And let's close this since we saw that. And to our UI icons that we are passing for objects, and whenever I say objects in this context means both the objects that take up a whole node and can only be one per node, and the objects that are decorations, which are basically decorations. And this they of course need to know a current object ID, the raw image, so that we can update it. And instead of calling the materials on the level creator, we pass the game object to place, and we pass the string, the object ID we are saving on that button. Now, object data and material data. Object data is basically a simple class which has an object ID, the game object, the prefab, and the object icon. Similarly, material data is another class, material ID, and only a material. Okay, since we can take the texture from directly the material. If we are currently opened a material list or not, and the game object for next and previous. So on initializing, we have to init icons and update the icons. To init the icons, we basically go and populate our list. Okay, we're looking for every game object that has a UI icon component, and we add it into the icons list. For every submenu, for every game object that has a material UI icon component, we add it to the material icon list. Update icons is over here, and we're basically going and saying for every 10 entries we have, if the I is lower than the current items count, so that means we have less than 10 items available, every entry into our grid until we reach 10 entries, close them. If the I is lower, that means we have available list. We need to do another check. So if the index list now is lower than our current items, because if we have 15 entries, okay, the first 10 will load the first time. If we click next, it's going to load the 5 next. How we know where we start loading? With the index list. But if we keep adding into the index list, we're going to get an error, because we're going to reach to a point that is higher than our current items. So if it's lower, our index list is lower than our actual current items count, we enable another icon. We pass the object ID from the current item with the index list, not the I, the index list. We assign the texture, which is the icon we took pictures from. We automatically took pictures, and we add to the index list, so next time it will add the other one. If not, then just close every new game object, and you can also close the next button, since you cannot press next anymore because there are no more items to load. If you do not close this, then the player might go and click next, and it will add to the index list, so you do not want to do that. Okay, similarly with update icons, we can have update material icons. Exactly the same. Instead of comparing with the current items, you can compare it with the current materials. Okay, and here's where we change a few stuff. We open the icon, we assign the ID, but what we can do with the texture is, of course we do not have an icon, but we can use current materials to go directly to the material, get the texture, main text. Now keep in mind this has to do with how properties are assigned into your own shader. The standard shader has main texture. Usually if it takes a texture, this is how they're going to name it, and we also need to cast it as a texture 2D. So the only thing left is to go to the texture, to the actual icon, and to the raw image reference, and assign directly the texture, and keep adding to the index list and everything else is the same as above. Change icons UI. If this goes to the preview, this goes to the back or next button, this list, you need to assign it on click, okay? And if we're going back or not, we're just passing it. So if we have opened the material list, it's going to update the icons material, and we need to pass if you are clicking the back or not, the back button. Otherwise, if it's not a material list, then you need to update the change icons. So if we are not back, that means we're moving next. We're just simply calling update icons. So what it's going to do, it's going to go from the index list is last finished, so at 10, and keep adding to that until we have reached either 10 more entries or until we have no more items to add. We close, of course. We can set active the previous button over here, but if we are going back, we can enable, of course, the next button, and on the index list we basically need to go 20 entries back. Okay, since the index list will start from 10. If you have it will always basically start from 10. Okay, and if you just subtract 10, it's going to reach 10 again. So we're going 20 back, that means 2 pages back. Okay, but we need to do a check. So if the index list is lower than 0, then make it 0. And you can also, since we have reached the first entry, 0 index, close the previous button and then call to update the icons. Exactly the same for the icons materials, but instead of having updating the icons, calling the update icons function, just call the update material icons. Okay, everything else is the same. And of course we can have it as a singleton. Now let's see where we call this, where we actually call this this function, where we basically initialize this. Final reference, and it's on the menu handler. So let's see the menu handler. The menu handler needs the reference to the submenu, a reference to the database, our object UI, which is the backdrop, the grid for the objects, like this. The backdrop is the background, the gray part, okay, and we have it separated over here. It's basically this. If you close the background, it will close all the options over here. Material UI, the grid for the materials, and the wall creator UI, which right now we do not have anything on the wall creator, but on the next part, probably the next part, we're going to add differences on the wall creator too. And the menu type. Preview type is to store the previous type, because we do a few comparisons. So on start, we set up the reference to the submenu, we initialize the submenu, we get the reference to the database, and we also call the function change menu, and we pass the type. Now let's see the menu type. Menu type can be, and if you have more menu types, we will add them over. You will add it over here. Okay, menu type, where you should think of it as the current active menu type, what it can be. It will be objects, or decorations, or the wall creator, or the terrain, which is the tile painter, or everything is closed. So the first time we call it, we want everything closed. We have a function that closes everything, and you also check if the type equals the previous type. So the type you're passing equals the previous type. That means your player went over here and clicked this 2 times. So let's have it for the menus to close if you're pressing the same menu 2 times. Okay, so if that was the case, then change the previous type to close. So it will come over here on the switch, and since we do not have anything on the close, it will just keep all the menus closed. We assign the previous type to whatever the type was, and basically this will return, so this will not run from down here if you want it closed. So based on the switch, the type we have, if it's object, then you open the background and the object UI, and you pass a new list to the sub menu, which we should have seen this. Okay, this is a function that has a new list. You pass the list, you clear the your current items list, and instead of assigning the same list, because if you clear this, then it will take it so that you want to clear the list you are passing, and we do not want that, so we create new entries for exactly the list it's going to be used on your UI. So we basically copy the entries from one list to the other. Okay, we create a new object data, we pass the object ID. The model is not that necessary to pass since this is the UI, okay, but it doesn't hurt either. You pass the texture and you add it into the current items list. We set up the index list on 0 since it's basically you're saying you're going to change the menu, the current active menu, and you update the icons. Since we have that on the icons, for the icons, we need to also do that the same and write a new function for the materials. So we can have pretty much the same, copy one entry of one list to the other, and call the function to update your icons. Back to menu handler. Okay, if it's decoration, it's pretty much the same, but instead of passing the list you are passing, we haven't shown the list on the database, but I've basically separated on my database. I separated the list, so objects go into their own list, decorations go into their own list, and materials go into another list. Okay, so depending on the type of asset bundle you load, it's going to assign it on its own list. And terrain, we have all this. Okay, pretty much what game object to open and what to close. And we pass the new material list. Okay, the database, and we're going to show all this. If it's wall creator, then you only have to go and open the wall creation, and later on we'll see the changes we can do to the wall creator. Okay, so simple, close all material list. Okay, false, reset the index list, and if you have game object assigned, then have them all to close. And we can also keep this as a single. Now let's actually see the changes we have on our database. On the previous video, which you should probably see if you haven't already, which was about loading and making automatically icons, we had a database and a load database interface, and we were basically passing a bundle name, an asset bundle name, a subfolder for where the icons for that bundle name is, and we were loading the game objects from the asset bundles. We were seeing if we have already created icons or not. If we haven't, we add all the objects into a different list and go create icons for that for that game object. Okay, and then when this whole procedure was done, we simply go back and update it into our database list, into a single list. Now we will, as I said, we're going to separate objects will be loaded into another list, decorations to another, and materials to another. And instead of keeping one bundle name, we're going to separate bundle protocols, and I can add everything I want over here, and it's going to try and find them. So we can have every bundle protocol, asset bundle protocol, will need a name, the subfolder name where the icons are. It's best if you keep them separated from each other, otherwise it might load an icon that you do not want. The wrap-up enum will be, if basically the wrap-up is what we're going to do. It's what handles after you load the game object. So basically checks on what list to populate basically on your database. And after that, of course, we have them on the database. We need to go and update our resources manager. For materials, before I forget, of course, as I said, the first entry to your level materials should always be the air. Okay, since it has some special properties. Of course, if I want to just keep all that, if I want to add a game object or a material like this, I can simply make a new entry and just adding them over here. So I do not even have to include them into. I do not have to include them into the, in the asset bundles. So let's see the changes on the database. Are 3 lists. Okay, icon compression will be the same. This will be the same. Our singleton and all that. We saw our classes for our 2 lists, and the other one is the same. So I'm closing the database. Now let's close this and the sub-menu references. We do not need them anymore. Load database. We have our bundle protocols, and we're going to separate them with a class. Okay, bundle name, subfolder name, the wrap-up method, and the bundle type. Bundle type is if we are loading a game object or a material. And level object, deco, terrain for the load wrap-up list. Okay, so let's go through the procedure once again. We're going to use a bit of difference, so we're going to keep a current list and a material list once more. I think all the other stuff, we had them the same. And we also have created a session master, which basically it's basically threading, not threads. It keeps in order all the procedures, so everything works as it should. The session master, we saw that directly on the turn-based game. It's pretty much the same one, but we'll see it in a bit. Now, okay, we start loading. We get the current bundle protocol, and of course the bundle index, it will be 0, so it will be the first one. And we start the coroutine to load the bundle. We load the bundle, get the session master, okay, we get the references, and we call the actual function, the actual coroutine that loads the asset bundle. We pass the name, and we also need to pass the type now. So we come over here and have the name, similar to what we were doing before, or not similar, exactly the same. We look for the asset, for the file. Okay, we have our load request and all that. I've covered that on the previous video, so you better watch that if you have problems. And before we actually load our actual game objects inside from the asset bundle, we need to know the type. So if it's a game object type, then we do what we do before. Okay, load all assets, game object. So it's going to load all game objects. If it's a material, instead of game object, we want to load materials. So it will load the materials. And we add it either on the loaded object list or on the loaded materials list. And we can unload on the end our asset bundle. After that, we populate our database, and if the load object is not null, then add them into making new entries of object data, pass the name as the ID, and pass the model, and add it into our current list. Previously we had instead of current list we have something else. Just name this current list. We will do the same as the loaded materials, even if it's not its own time to load. Okay, we're not loading everything all together. We load first one asset bundle, then the other, then the other. So if it doesn't have anything on this list, then it's going to ignore this, or the same goes for this one. Okay, so we do the same as above, but for the material data instead of the object data, and we yield return null. We check for icons only from the current list. Okay, since materials, as I said, do not have icons, since we can take exactly the base color or the main texture. Okay, this stays the same. If it doesn't find an icon, then add it to a list to go and create it. This also stays the same. We initialize, we go and create the icons. Save location, also the same. The subfolder you're passing, of course, you take it from the asset bundle name, which was over here. Icon candidate, save location, and all that. When you create the icons, which was check for icons. Okay, simple. And we can go and continue. When we finish loading, okay, we destroy the camera rig if we had one, and we call the new function we're going to see, which is the wrap method, and we need to pass the current bundle index. And now, after the wrap method, if the bundle index is lower than the bundle protocols we have, then we can keep loading the next bundle. Otherwise, we can simply call on our session master the function that says load database. So the session master continues with the procedure, which is to create a new empty level at start, and then either load a new level or load the level editor. Wrap method, we pass our wrap method, we load the reference to the resource manager, and we have a switch with our wrap method. So if it's a level object, we also have another function that takes from one list and copies to basically it takes from this list to this list. Okay, so for level object it's going to copy I said it elsewhere, takes from this list to this list, and for every game object you have into this to your object database list, it goes to the resource manager, creates a new level game object, passes all the reference, and then adds it to the resource manager. Same for decorations. Okay, the exact same function, and let's see this one. It's just an encapsulation of this, nothing special. Okay, create a new entry and add it to another list, and on the end clear the from list. Same for the level for the decorations, but instead create a new level stacked object. Okay, pass the reference and add him to the list you want to add. If on the wrap up list is the wrap up is on for the terrain, okay, for each material you have in your material list, create a new entry for the material holder, pass the reference, pass the ID, and this we already have this, so we do not need to call this once again. Okay, to the resource manager, add it to the level materials, and also add it to your material database. Now, even though if you're passing the references into your resource manager, you basically do not need the database anymore, but you can still keep it. And so if you're having problems with save and load and all that, it will not hurt, probably will not take too much of a memory anyway. Okay, so everything else stays the same, and we are pretty much done. Finish loading and all that. Now let's see the session master. So I think I've covered everything from over here. I'm closing this. I have some changes that aren't necessarily done on the loading asset balance and that, but we will see them in the end. Session master. Now, okay, we have level editor, all our references we're going to use, if it's a level editor or not. Okay, and all the other stuff we need to use. Keep in mind of the namespaces. I purposely keep them over here so that you do not get confused, since we have a lot of scripts that share the same name but are under a different namespace. Okay, you can use them at the using over here, so you do not have to write a railway. On start, we assign all the references and we start a coroutine to load the database. If we're loading the database, if this load database goes to the load database script and calls the start loading, calls this function which goes and loads all the bundles. Okay, so when this ends, it's going to load this function, loaded database. So this will start another coroutine, which let's just call it continue. So to continue, you have over here, we start not load database, continue. Okay, we create a new level, which is this. And on our turn-based game, we were doing, if it was a level editor, if it was not a level editor, then it was going to load a new level, load in game scenes, initialize level, and all that. But I do not have them over here, since this is not the turn-based anymore. It's not that turn-based project. And if it was a level editor, then you go and enable the level editor, which is just enable the level creator UI. Game object and the level creator, actually. Yeah, the level creator is enabled over here. So yeah, just like that. And is also singular. So this is the changes that have to do with loading a database, loading asset bundles and all that. Now some changes we have to do on our previous scripts, and we have to do that because since we are loading now game objects, we cannot have scripts into our asset bundles. Okay, I have my asset bundles over here, and we cannot and we do not want to load scripts into asset bundles because we do not want our users to have to write a whole new script, okay, apart from the one that creates asset bundles. And so previously we had on our objects we had a script called level objects. Okay, we do not want that anymore. We need to delete it from all our prefabs. And on the materials, of course, we didn't have anything else. So materials are the same like doing an asset bundle for them. Okay, just assign them to an asset bundle. So since we take out the level object over here, we need to go and do a lot of changes on our level creator. Oh, and one more thing on our create icons manager, when we are taking the screenshot, we need to also add, when we are assigning the current render texture, after we have assigned the current render texture, we need to go into our camera, target texture, and say release. So otherwise, so it will get rid of the depth we had on the previous icon we took. Okay, because it's going. The way it works, it's like a bit additive. Okay, so if it renders one object and then you put another object in front of it to load on, even if it's on a different frame, it's going to keep the background back. Anyway, you just need to add this list over here, this line over here. Now, on our level creator, wherever we place either an object or a stacked object or everything else, both on the clone object and when we're actually instantiating the object, we need to add component level object. Okay, actual, both on the clone and both on the actual game object. And we also need to be passing on the placed object properties, the object ID. If you do not pass the object ID, then it will not load, it will render an empty, as it will save it as an empty object ID, so you cannot find it inside the list, so you get an error the next time you will try to load your list. Okay, both for the stackable objects, both for the tile we'll see in a bit, and it was place objects. Okay, add component level object, add component level object, object ID. I had this bookmark, but Visual Studio has a hard on to get rid of bookmarks. And from what I see over here, yeah, I also passed encapsulated a bit the way we are passing game objects. Okay, so on all my UI buttons I use the same function right now, and I have the object ID, and if we have a previous clone object or a previous stack clone object, destroy them both, close all, and say the clone object is null. We go and find the level game object from the resources manager with the object ID. If that is null, that means the ID does not belong to the level game object, so you do not have an object to place. Check for the level stacked objects. Okay, so it goes to a different list, to the stack object based list with the same ID, and if it's not null, then it's going to assign that as the object we want to place. So instead of having an object so that we know we are going to place an object, we are placing a stacked object. If the level game object does not return null, that means we have an object, so we want to place an object. Okay, a bit of encapsulation, it's a little bit better. Same for the deleting function. Since I only have one button over here, I just call this function, and if the has object is enabled, close all and open delete object. If the place stack object is enabled, close all, delete stack object. If the create wall is enabled, close all, delete wall. If the has material is enabled, and you can paint, close all, and delete tile, which we will see what this does. And the reason why I do not have the close all over here is because I want to, over here outside of this if statement before the, or I guess, yeah, no, we have to keep it like this, because if I put it outside of any of these if statements, it's going to open the function. It's going to either make this false, so you cannot come inside the if statement, and if you put it after, then even if you make this true, it's going to close it again. And of course, to close all, we also have the delete tile. You need to add it over here to false. And yeah, let's see the delete tile too. If you want to delete tile, of course you need to add this in the update. If we want to delete tile, we find the update mouse position, we have our current node, and if the player leaves, press the mouse button. If it's not the first, a tile that is on the first floor, then change it to be the first material, which it's always the air material. So we can also change the node type to air and pass the material ID and all that. If it's on the first floor, then instead of air, okay, unless you want to have the first floor to be able to be air, then assign the first material that's not air and keep the node type to ground. Now, before I forget, when you're also creating the wall, and that goes for your wall creator, when we instantiate the actual wall, so this needs to go from create wall, create walls actual, create wall object, and it's create walls from list. Yeah, it's a little bit down the road. Okay, when we instantiate the wall prefab, we have a level object. We go and take assign the level object, and then you can add the ID to wall. It will not, I think it wouldn't hurt if you didn't, but let's just be safe. And you also need to tick is wall object. If you do not do this, then it's going to take it as a normal game object, and it's going to be looking into your normal game object list for the ID of wall, and it's not going to find one, so it's not going to find a prefab, so you're going to get an error. And with the same logic, you also need to do the same on your stackable objects. Okay, is stackable. Just keep these things in mind. Yeah, if you get something wrong, okay, it's going to throw you an error, so you missed something. Let's see my other bookmarks. Yeah, I changed the paint all actual. I keep this paint all, and I have paint all actual that can take now a few references. So the reference is the material holder. If you want to hard code, we basically want to hard code the painting and the actual floor. hard code is which floor to paint, I think. Yeah. Okay. So if we find the Y, the current floor, if we want to hard code it, then the Y will be the floor we are saying, we're passing over here. And for each tile, of course, we go and change the material ID, previous node, and all that. We change the material, and we also assign a different material, the correct material ID. So on start to this, let's close all this. Okay, add the delete tile inside your update. So on start, I can come here and say paint all actual, level materials 1, true. So it hard codes the level materials with the first floor. So it's going to paint the first floor with the ground material. And we also need to assign the previous ID over here. And I think where we were painting the tile had a few problems. And yeah, so basically, so that it has an actual ID that it can use, so it's a material that you can use. That's why I've assigned something to the previous ID before we start passing around the IDs. Okay, object type, I think everything else is still the same. Now, let's see on our resource manager what we did. Get material ID. Now here's something interesting. We cannot compare, when we are loading materials, we cannot compare material equals material, because they are not exactly the same material, they are different instances. Okay, so that means it's not the same material. So we need to use object reference equals. Okay, otherwise when you are comparing, when we want to get the material ID back, we're getting a few errors. Well, not getting errors. We're saying we cannot find that material. So you need to use reference equals to compare one material with the other, and then it will compare it like they are the same material. Same for the material holder. Okay, reference equals. You do not have to, if you use Visual Studio 15, okay, it will gray it out a bit, so you do not actually need to include the namespace or the class it derives from, since you know mono behavior and all that. But I just kept it so that you can see where this takes from. But over here I do not need it anymore. And this actually is a new function which returns the material holder instead of just the material, so you have both the ID and the material. And I've used this inside paint all. So if you're pressing paint all, you call this function with the material you have just selected, so it will paint everything with the material you have selected. And since we also did changes to how we apply our prefabs and models into our world, we also need to do changes when we save and load our game. Load the file levels, we've seen all this. So when we are recreating our walls, before we get the component of level object, we also need to assign the level object, assign the object ID for the wall and its wall object. For the stackables, tiles, I think it's the same. For the stackables, okay, add level object is stackable and pass the object ID. Otherwise, you won't be able to save again if you load the level, do a change and save the level, then you're going to get errors because your new created object, when you first loaded your scene, will not have an object ID and they will not be categorized correctly. So keep that in mind. Okay, create stackable objects and create level objects, add the component and pass the object ID only, since we don't need anything else. Okay, I think we've covered most of things. Let me just browse, just to make sure that, yeah, when we are clearing the level on the level manager, we also need to get rid of our previous created walls. Okay, we assign the wall grid, and for each floor we have into our wall grid, we destroy the holder, the nodes, and then we also clear our wall grid list. So when we load again, when we create our new grids, it's going to have to create the grid for the walls from the start. If you do not do everything I mentioned over here, it's not going to be game breaking errors. They're going to show as bugs, so pretty much this is bug fixing. Okay, so if you notice something weird, then either tell me about it and I'll tell you what is, if I've already covered it, or you might discover a new bug that I haven't already. And I think we've covered pretty much everything. I think over here we had our size Y, we were making it, if it was 0 we were making it 1, or I think somewhere we were coding the size Y, but I keep the initialization of the grid base like this right now. Okay, so just write it like this if it's different from you. And I think, yeah, we've pretty much done with this part. Yeah, all grid. I'm just browsing to see, since I've lost all my bookmarks, if we have something, if it's something that I missed. And I do not think so. Let's close this. We saw this one. Resource manager. Node objects. So, yeah, one other thing. On the node objects, when we are changing the material, I just go and get the material from the texture ID, okay, directly from the resources manager, and assign that. We're passing this as we were passing it before. Yeah, we've done with this. And create icons manager is still the same. Okay, so we covered everything we had to cover. So now, right now, if I want to add a new game object, or a new game object to place into my scene, let's do it completely from the start. Okay, I'll just add, let's add a capsule. Come over here. Let's add it like this. I will not use a collider. So, like this. Okay, I'm dropping it, making it a prefab. I delete this capsule. I'll assign it to level objects. Now, here's the tricky part. I have to rebuild the asset bundles. Of course it's going to take a bit because we have a lot of textures and a lot of asset bundles, but yeah, it wasn't that long anyways. Okay, the asset bundles go directly and recreate it over here. So I'll click play. Yeah, we do not need to maximize. Hit objects, and you will see that, okay, the icon is like this because the capsule was too big and it was pretty close to the camera, but you see that I have a new icon, a new object, and I can now also add it like this. So to add new objects, you saw how this thing was so simple and so easy to do. Same for the materials, although I think in the materials I do not know what will happen if we might get an error. Let's call this test. Since we do not have any textures assigned, terrain, let's hit build asset bundles. I do not know what will happen if you do not have a texture assigned. Let's hit play. Terrain paint. So it just takes the, so that's good to know, it just takes the color, so that's pretty good. Right, now of course if you are, let's test this, I don't know if this actually will work. If you are, the way I did it with the asset bundles and copying and pasting the asset bundles from the Explorer, that means it's going to have to override all the previous level objects. Okay, so let's test if I make a new asset bundle category, or how, let's call this mod. Okay, I'll build the asset bundles again, level objects, asset bundles. Okay, we have a new asset bundle called mod, and I go to my level manager and have a new bundle protocol. Since I know it's a level object basically, I'll rename the bundle name of course to mod. I'm going to, let's put them in the same folder as the level objects for the icons. The wrap up will be level object and will be also a game object. So what I did right now is load another bundle with the same properties and the same behaviors as my level objects. Objects, and you see that it's also loaded in the end, but there is a problem over here. This it took the level stackables as a normal game object for some reason, and I do not know why it did that. There's probably something with one of the lists. Let's see what it does on the decorations. The decorations still the same, but it also took the level objects. It took the other level objects. Let's see it in a bit. Okay, but instead of having the level objects, instead of overriding my level objects, I just add it as a mod, so a player will only have to go and override this as a mod. But what we can also do is write a text file and load bundle protocols from there. So you have your default ones, and you can let your players go and change a txt file with a bundle that has the bundle name, the subfolder, and the wrap-up method and the bundle type. Okay, and it will copy that. Let's see why the decorations load like that. level objects. Okay, so the bundles are correct, so that means there's something in the script. Let's see if I can find it fast. Database, load database, current list. Let's see where we empty this one, and we do not empty this one. Yeah, we empty it inside over here, so this shouldn't run as a problem. So I have no clue why this happened, but just to be sure, let me delete all my asset bundles, and I also want to delete all my icons. Notice that I did not delete the folders because I want to keep the folders. I do not care about the level. Okay, we have everything deleted. Let's rebuild. Let's hit play. Okay, it still was like that. Everything else is correct. Okay, let me pause the video and I'll see what's wrong with it. So, the fix was pretty simple. On populate database, before we access the current list, just call current list clear, okay, before you start adding objects to the current list. And let's just do the same for the materials list, although you probably won't need to have a lot of materials. And when we are actually loading the asset bundle, which was let me find it, load asset bundle. Okay, just make the previous array, the loaded objects array, just make it null, and same for the materials. And it will load as probably it will not take the decorations as a level object. So of course you can see that with something like this it's way more intuitive, and our whole level editor is more enhanced. Let's see all our functions we have. Placing an object, level objects. Of course, since this goes one per node, it's going to replace the previous one. We can have decorations that you can stack game objects. We can have walls. We can have terrain painting, or have paint everything like this. I can also delete previous style or delete a game object. I can go into another folder, another floor, not folder. Something like this. Let's just say delete these guys. Let's put this and do some more. I should have probably built a wall into this one too. You will see that with the new wall grader everything is so much better. And we can also place, of course, objects into another floor. So you can pretty much imagine the possibilities with a game like this, with a level editor like this, and with a level editor that your users can load every game object they want, every model they want, and everything they want, with the only thing required from them is to write a few names correctly and have Unity installed. Okay, and then you can simply go and click save. Got an error. I don't know what that is. Yeah, because there is no game object, I guess, over here, the other UI. We forgot to assign something. Yeah, we forgot to assign the other UI. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just somewhere over here, I guess, on the interface manager. Yeah, there's a yeah, of course. Forgot to assign the new game, this thing over here, since we broke everything apart. So anyway, I'll do it in a bit. Okay, let's call this editor level. Let's save, and we also get another error because the game object is not assigned. Let's assign it. Let's assign this. Let's add another one. Let's add the change floor, and we can also add the level creator buttons. Okay, and now you will not get an error from over here. Let's clear this. Let's hit play. Let's load level. Of course, I have some other tests. Level editor, and boom, just like that, we have everything that we had before. And if I click save now, okay, we do not get an error because we have the reference assigned. So I think we can end the video over here. Okay, we have done a lot of cool stuff with this. So on the next video, we're going to see some changes I have with the wall creator, and yeah, it's mostly the structure will be the same, just some differentiations. And after that, we're going to go back into our turn-based game, since we pretty much have everything we need to work now. I know I've said on the previous video that we only had one more video for the level editor, but you see how this things goes. One opens another door, and another door, and another door, and that's game development for you. So you know what to do. Hit that like, hit that subscribe if you haven't, so that you can see where this ends, and also consider supporting me with either Patreon or grabbing a project or two, including this one on Gumroad. And I'll see you next time.